Okay, we're talking about money again, and we're back in the green chair because it's the money chair. I brought notes this time because a lot of questions. You got to straighten a lot of stuff out. There's a lot of things about money that are misunderstood, and there's a lot of ways that these systems work that are not necessarily intuitive. You really haven't been taught these things, and you know, you're not going to have much success if you don't really understand the bigger pictures. So, we're going to continue from the other day. Just so you all know, this is not financial advice and all that. I'm just a guy who read some books and done a lot of research. And this is what I do for myself. These are just my opinions. It's all for entertainment, right? Don't ever do anything I say. You'd be dumb to do that. So take that for what you will. But looking at this money stuff, and let's start with reviewing what we talked about last time. Money is infinite. It has no end. It can be printed by banks from anywhere in the world, really. And you can get it from these banks if you know their process. And it's brand new money that's never existed before, and you get first mover advantage. Also, how living as an entrepreneur versus an employee have massively different effects in your life, right? This stuff can completely affect how you live. And let's be honest, there are ways that are better than others. So to start with, let's break it down into two very simple categories. You have employees and entrepreneurs. Employees are really at the mercy of the economy and of their employers. And they're very limited in how much they can make. If you're an employee, you pretty much can calculate your net worth immediately from day one for what your salary is. And you will know how much money you will make in life. And if it's a good amount and you like it, hey, that's great for you. And I'm very glad you found something that fits. But knowing, as we've learned, how money is continually growing and expanding, it's being printed nonstop, your expenses will go up. And you will need to figure out a way to generate more than what you are right now. This being said, you may get raises, and we talked about you can learn how to, negotiate higher wages through changing employment, or maybe you're lucky and you have a very good boss who's very aware of all this stuff, who will take care of you as long as that person is around and is reasonable. That's you may have some type of business you can really be a part of that gives you a pathway to growing. Then the other is being an entrepreneur, someone who can set their prices and continually charge more, and you have the control of how much you can make, and the sky is the limit. You can expand, you can grow your business, you can take on employees, and even very cool, in the end, you can sell your business. That is your essentially could be your retirement, and you can get massive tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars payout with a business that you sell if you do it correctly. So these are the things that we're going to go over today as kind of how money works, right? And there's some other stuff too. So let's just start with the employee one, the one that everyone is should most everyone be familiar because statistically everyone is mostly employed, which is how it really needs to be. But anyway, so as an employee, right, you get your check, your monthly, bi-weekly, whatever, and you pay all of your expenses. Uh, Hopefully, you get your expenses within your means, meaning that you have an excess amount of money at the end of every month outside of all your expenses you can use to invest and use to entertain yourself, right? And maybe even your company you're with, they have some type of retirement program, 401k, IRA, whatever it is, etc., pension. Now, you have to realize that those things that they set up for you, those investment plans, are absolutely better than just holding cash by far. Your cash will go down over time on average. There may be a year or two where cash has some benefits and more value. Like if the stock market crashed in a year, well, you did good in holding on to cash. But generally, your career lifespan, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, your cash will become worth much less. Look at gas prices in your lifetime. When I was a kid, they started out, I saw 75 cents for a gallon of gas. Not too long ago, it was up in the $5 range. That's massively increased in percentage terms. And then housing. When I was a kid, houses used to be, it was very possible to buy a $80,000 house. Now houses are $400,000. It's across the board. It's not all equal, but just know these things go up for a multitude of reasons. So, with that being said, you have to figure out how to prepare for later on in life when you get old and your body hurts and you have medical problems, or you're just done with working because you did your part, right? And want to focus on other more important things in life. Like, I don't know, reading books on why we're really here, or helping out other people, volunteering at a church, or etc. You know, building out your family. But in order to do that, you're going to have to stack away some type of wealth. It's unavoidable. It's prudent. It's wise. So, dealing with this, if you need to go with the employee route, and let's say you do your pension or your business's thing, those people are going to screw you so bad you wouldn't believe it most of the time. Whoever they get to manage your wealth, they are going to extract fees for their services, and they are going to take a cut of your profits. So right at the bat, you invest 10% of your whatever per month per year into your pension IRA, whatever, and they're going to take some percentage, 3 to 10%, something in that ballpark, for management. And they do that not just with you, but they do that with, could be 10,000 people. They're raking in some cash. And then you have on top of it, let's say for the year, you make profits in your portfolio. Well, when they click the sell button, they're going to take a percentage of that. And you don't have to learn about it all. I mean, you are paying for a service, but there's a lot of money on that table. And what's crazy is the stock market on average, something like 7% returns, right? And yes, that's compounded over time, and that's in a long time frame. You are very easily able to make way more than that in many other things if you take the time to learn. And really, as an employee, if you're not making a lot in a salary or whatever, a paycheck, you may not do very well when retirement comes around, even if you did your part, because prices will have gone up, and most people won't be able to calculate for how much prices will truly go up versus what's projected to go up. And right now, you need, like, at least, if you're retiring around, Social Security collection period, which you may not even get that when you're older at this point. It may not even exist in the future. But around, what is it, 63, 65, something like that? You're going to need at least 20 to 30 years of retirement. And who knows, we may even live for longer when it gets to that time with healthcare improves, maybe. You're going to need at least a bare minimum of $3 million set aside. It very easily could be 6 to 10 million by the time my generation gets to that point. That's a lot of investing, and you better hope things go right. But look, if you, and I'm talking for myself here, figure out other ways that you can, there's very basic, obvious ones. um, that are inflation hedges that you don't have to deal with this stuff. And I don't want to give any specific advice or anything, but generally, just buying tangible things that are storable or you know um, are hard based, like gold, silver, real estate, maybe even cryptocurrencies, maybe specifically Bitcoin. That one's still not entirely proven. We'll see what happens. These things produce much higher returns than that 7% on average. Gold has outperformed the stock market last 20 years, and you may not realize any actual gains when calculating out inflation, but it has outperformed the stock market, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is something you're going to have to spend if you want to take it on hundreds, if not thousands, of hours researching in order to really be successful in it. And this is not an easy thing. So if you want to do this employee thing, it would probably behoove you to really start learning about this type of stuff so that you can do everything you can. And then also some other basic tips is buy everything you can in bulk. Buy everything you can in bulk because you know that in the future the prices of those things are going to go up. And if you can buy something that's storable for a year to 5 years or something like that, just set aside the time to buy as much of it as you can and store it so that, one, you buy it when it's at a cheaper price, and two, you can, well, save all that time. If you have to go to the store every single week, that's 52 weeks in a year, and you have to spend an hour or 2 hours going out shopping, you just saved over 100 hours. I mean, that's a lot. You could have been doing so much. You could have been spending that time learning about investing, right? Or whatever, to get yourself in a better footing. That is huge because at the end of the day, it's all about time. Okay, now, I just kind of overviewed what is the most basic way of living the employee thing and kind of what you're going to have to do in that scenario to make any type of comfortable living for a median income. A median income, that's important that I bring that up because that's just what most people are going to make. Now, here's the other thing about being an employee. There are different types of employees. Some make way more than others. Now, anything that's a entry-level position, you can't stay in that. You cannot stay in that. You're going to have to move up. You're going to have to figure out how to get at least to mid-level management positions, if not higher, or learn quality skills for a company, whether it be a welder or some type of medical position like registered nurse, etc., in order to make that bigger money so that you can start, packing away for retirement, etc. And you can have money to do other things that are more valuable in life, right? Entry level is for beginners. You must get out of that. If you're still in entry level positions by 30, you're messing up. You need to change that fast. Fast, okay? I'm not trying to be mean to you, but someone needs to tell you, and you'll benefit from it. Now, there's a whole nother class of employees, and that is high performers and entertainer employees, right? These people, they do very, very well. So, like, let's talk about, you have, obviously, doctors have the potential, right? Most doctors don't make as much as you think because they get in so much college debt, like $200,000, $500,000 college debt, and then they have to pay that off for over a decade until they're about 40. They really aren't making any traction. But if you're a highly specialized doctor, like some type of brain surgeon or a specific type of surgery or someone who specializes in diagnosing very specific diseases, those guys can make a little more as an employee, not going into their own practice, right? And I'm just trying to focus on the employee route here. Lawyers, another example, they can get percentages of the cases, etc. You all know what I'm talking about. But this is still like middle level employee. High level employees are like athletes and entertainers. They're employees a lot of times of a record label or a sports team or whatever. And, or, these people, they have a little hint on why they're making so much money. And that's because, as let's say a carpenter, right? A low level ish. Some of them do okay. They make like $30 an hour or some more. But they're doing something. They might be able to build 20, 30 houses a year, right? Not necessarily on their own, but with a crew. And they get paid for those 20, 30 houses. A singer, right, or a songwriter or performer, they are selling one song and they could sell it 1 billion times. If that's $1 per that song or something like that, that's $1 billion. So you have to also, when you're an employee and you're trying to plan on how to make the much money as an employee, if you're going to do something like that, you have to think, is this industry, this field I'm going into, is it going to be something that I can sell to a whole bunch of people or a few people? Now, if you're going to sell it to like many people, right, for your boss, right, you have a good chance at making quite a bit. Now, if you're going to be someone who is not going to sell a whole bunch of stuff, right, or you're just going to do some repetitive, you need it to be highly skilled in order to make a lot at it. Highly technical. And that would be how you would, as an employee, do very well. And you can work your way up and you become this entrepreneur maybe eventually that gets into the executive part of the business because you're so well versed and skilled. They start having you manage the highly skilled people. That's kind of your long-term thing. So this is really the employee avenue. Pretty well understood. And yeah, the next though is what I'm excited about. And what I am excited about is the entrepreneur side. These people have the most potential of them all. The sky is the limit. And you can do the same thing as an employee. Let's say the carpenter thing. You can be a carpenter who works for someone else framing houses and doing $30, maybe $40 an hour. Or you could be the carpenter who works on his own, a solopreneur, right? And is highly skilled at whatever, does high level carpenter stuff. You could easily do $200-300 an hour, right? And that's no scale. Because you're performing the sales, the marketing, the business risk, and a service that's probably, highly specialized because of your skill, right? Already right out of the gate, you're making more money as basically what is an employee, but just as an employee for yourself, right? But what's even more important with businesses, all right, let's talk about the extremes, right? Is if you want to really learn things in life, if you look at the extreme versions, you can get a lot more information out of it than just a bunch of average examples. Let's look at billionaires and really wealthy people. Where are they getting their money from? Many people do not understand how billionaires get their wealth. Most people think, all right, the general story is they started a business from scratch. They worked hard designing a product or service that was maybe cutting edge or a little new, and then they ended up scaling that business, and then they made a bunch of cash flow that they piled up and became a billionaire, and their bank account crept up. That is not it. That is completely wrong. That is very rare. There's a few that have done that, but it's just not how it works. Billionaires are billionaires because they sell their business. They create a system, a automated, scaled thing, and then they sell it. And there's multiple ways they sell it, and it doesn't just grow their money, it like exponentially explodes their money in a way that you wouldn't believe. They couldn't make as much as they do slowly growing. I'm talking about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, even Warren Buffett, who's an investor, Carlos Slim, name all of them, right? Ray Dalio. This is very key because this relates into the banking system directly, and this is going to bring us on another topic. Um, they are not selling so much their products to individuals and trying to go to someone who has a bank account with a balance and get them to transfer their balance over to them. What they are doing is they are creating something that is underwritable, something with an SOP, and then they are going to a bank and saying, hey, I have this cash flowing asset with a proven track record that meets all of your criteria. I want you to calculate my EBITDA or earnings before insurance, taxes, whatever, blah, blah, blah. 3 to 5 years of company profit. And then we will give you a loan, potentially all the way up to 3 years revenue all at once so you can grow the business even more. This allows them to explode their business up in scale because they have a proven system. And then when they do that, right, eventually they get to the point where they're like, I want to cash out on this business. I don't want to just live off the cash flow. Cash flow is not all that big. Elon Musk did this, and this is a good example, while he was growing his businesses, was actually pretty broke. He was so broke because he was not living off the cash flow, he was just reinvesting it, that he was sleeping on other people's couches and asking to borrow money. And all that while he was a billionaire. It wasn't from cash flow. He went and he grew the businesses, and then he did something very special. This is what most all billionaires do. They take their company public, meaning they sell stock, they sell shares. And this is great because you can still retain control of the business, but sell a portion of the business. How do they do this? They go to a stock exchange or whatever, and they do what's called an IPO, an initial public offering. They go through a process with the stock exchange. They prove the business is successful in whatever ways. They have to state a whole bunch of financials, quarterly earnings. They have to create a board, a bunch of stuff. And when they do this, they then typically sell a minority of the business. They want to still be in control of it and still have the business, etc. So what they do is they keep 51% of the shares of the business. They then sell off 49, and typically at an initial public offering, those shares are priced in percentage to what the business is worth on paper. They immediately walk into money. They get to keep their business, and then they get to get half of the profits as if they sold the whole business. And they take that money and they can either keep it for themselves or they can reinvest it back in the business, right? Which is huge. If you have a $100 million business, you want to end up, listing it and going public. You put, 49% of it on the stock market. All of those shares get bought. You immediately get to grab $49 million minus taxes, whatever. And you still get to own the business and make it profitable to then gain that cash flow later, right? You can also take that money and then reinvest it and to grow the business to do it again. You can do this a second time, a third time, a fourth time. And this is how people get to have $100 billion. Now, here's what's also interesting. What we really should circle back to is, where did all that money come from to buy all those stocks, etc.? This is what's crazy. Most of that money is not from you and I going out and putting our money together and going and buying a stock, right? It comes from pension funds, hedge funds, um, people who manage money for all the employees, your money that we talked about earlier. They take all of it and they give it to Elon for his company, right? On top of that, this is what's more interesting. That's only a small portion of the money that's used to buy those shares. The majority of that money goes back to what we talked about earlier. To buy all the shares comes from loans. It comes from margin. And they use brand new currency that's freshly printed, hot off the press, to go buy the shares of Elon Musk's company. And he gets brand new money in hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that is fresh, never been entered into the market, that he can go out, get first mover advantage to buy whatever he wants. This is the extreme version of being an entrepreneur. But you can do this too on a small scale. You don't have to go design rocket ships and electric cars. You could start a plumbing company. This is real. You could start a plumbing company, do basic services, systemize it, make an SOP, record everything. This is key. You have to record all of your transactions. You have to record all of your receipts, record all the numbers of jobs you did, record everything, because you have to prove it all. And once you're able to do all that, you could easily, by the time you're 40 years old, go and either sell the business to an individual who wants to just buy a plumbing company for cash flow, or you could potentially, if in some scenarios, this one would be a little harder to do, but list it as a stock, right? Stock exchange. It's that one's, a plumbing company is not a good example for that. And this is how you could become tens of millions, hundreds of millions, right? All at a very young age. There's some people who do this over and over again throughout careers. There's other ways of doing this, but this is the entrepreneur route. Anyway, guys, so thinking about money differently, right? It's all about debt. And the people who manage and leverage debt better at the end of the day and understand that everything is inflationary are the ones who end up doing the best. There's a lot more to this, but I'm going to keep it simple for now because I gotta go way even further, but we'll just do this in chunks at a time if you want me to keep doing these videos. So with that all being said, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye-bye.